welcome and good afternoon. Thank you all for attending today's Toronto Tuesday Unlocking Funding Potential Key Updates on the BEAD Program and Financial Strategies for Success webinar. Presenting today from Tarana is their Global Government Affairs and Policy Manager, Gabriel Moran, and also representing from Winncom Technologies, our very own Fiber Product Manager, Alex Cernik. If anyone has any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to add them into the chat and they'll be addressed at the end of the webinar. Alex, you're up.
Dawn, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and everyone, thank you very much for taking the time. So before we begin, just to provide just a high-level overview of the roadmap for this webinar. First, we'll talk about the BEAD update. So what's the latest and greatest? First, we'll provide a high-level overview, and then we'll go at a state level where each individual state is sitting with Volume 2s being completed, with pre-qualification, and what their corresponding next steps look like. From there, Gabriel will talk about proposed alternative technology guidance. This was updated as of August 26th, but this is BEAD's opportunity for leveraging unlicensed fixed wireless in high-cost areas. So we'll talk about what that looks like along with some state guidance, and we'll conclude this webinar presentation with a high-level overview of Winncom's enhanced services. It'll start with just a general overview of our product eco center, where we'll also highlight services such as QGIS mapping, grant writing support, professional engineering, and PE drawings, along with we'll bring that full circle with our financial suite of products. Without further ado, I'll hand this off to Gabriel.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Hello, folks. As Alex mentioned, my name is Gabriel Moran, and I'm the Government Affairs and Policy Manager at Toronto Wireless. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy Tuesdays to join us to have a quick update here on the BEAD program. The Government Affairs and Policy team at Toronto spends a lot of time focusing on the BEAD program and engaging with state broadband offices and federal agencies on how we can achieve our mutual goal of 100% universal service. Before we dig into the state-by-state update on the BEAD program, I wanted to first review a high-level snapshot of how far the program has come. As of today, all but one state has received NTIA approval of its BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 2, and therefore can begin the 365-day timeline to solicit, score, and select subgrantee project applications as part of the BEAD program. So far, the program to date is relatively, the approval process for the Volume 2s is relatively in line with the timeline articulated by U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, who oversees Department of Commerce, which includes the NTIA. And she had publicly stated that she was looking to have all of the Volume 2s approved by November. If you read in between the lines, I think definitely top of mind for the Biden administration is Election Day. So it'll be interesting to see if there's going to be some pressure to get that final state approval before Election Day coming up here. In terms of where all the states are at, I think the states are really are in a unique spread of different states of the BEAD program. Several states have already had several rounds of bidding. Others are still waiting to hold their challenge process. Others are in the middle of negotiating the challenge process, while others are already scoring project applications and negotiating with providers to achieve full service. But what's interesting is that the states are staggered out in such a unique way to where potentially states can learn from each other as they progress through this process and encounter roadblocks or unique issues not considered when the BEAD program was devised. This also means that because of this, not so uniform distribution of states across the different phases of the BEAD program, some states may not be the beneficiaries of forthcoming NTIA guidance on the BEAD program that may be necessary in order to achieve the program's mandate of 100% universal service. And we will talk a little bit about this more in the context of the NTIA's recent guidance regarding alternative technologies. Next slide, please. Excellent. So first, we'll start with a try and give a quick glimpse and snapshot for each of the states and where they are at. We do not list all of the states here, but we have listed most of the states where we think there's a fixed wireless opportunity here alphabetically. First, I want to note, the great state of Alabama. Alabama is close to finishing its challenge process and is finalizing its map of BEAD eligible locations. It's currently in the final determination phase as of October 17th, with the anticipation of wrapping up the challenge process by November 17th and presumably submitting the challenge process results to the NTIA for final review. In the great state of Alaska. Alaska has wrapped up its challenge process as of August 4th and is currently awaiting NTIA feedback on the results of this process. At present, the state plans to initiate a 120-day application period for interested parties to apply for BEAD funding. The state of Alaska has stated publicly that they plan to open the grant application period on December 16th. With the expectation that the completed applications will be turned in to the Alaska Broadband Office by April 14th at 4:59 p.m. Alaska Standard Time. Alaska has published a draft state-level notice of funding opportunity for the allocation of its BEAD funds and is accepting public comments and feedback on this NOFO until November 15th. Arizona is currently in the process of doing market sounding and engaging with prospective subgrantees on prospective project areas and kind of getting a better sense as to where there's provider interest and where there isn't. They have currently not yet articulated when they plan to really open applications, but they're shooting for that late November timeline, particularly as they're still looking to get that critical state level information from providers, as well as NTIA approval of their challenge process results. For Arkansas, Arkansas opened its pre-qualification process on July 8th, and they have announced publicly that they expect to keep the pre-qualification process open all the way through the end of Tranche 1 or Round 1 bidding. Tranche 1 bidding was initially expected to begin in mid-October. To date, they have not yet announced that start date. So we're expected to see a updated program timeline coming out fairly soon. California has concluded its challenge process and is already wrapped up its final determination phase. The CPUC anticipates sending the challenge process results to the NTIA for final review no later than November 4th of 2024. At this time, they have not yet announced when they will initiate the BEAD application process. However, I am sure there will be forthcoming guidance from the California Public Utilities Commission on that front coming up here soon. Colorado has closed its BEAD application window as of yesterday, October 28th. Within 12 days of that application window closing, the Broadband Office will publish a summary of the applications received. The Broadband Office will hold its formal application review and scoring phase for up to 160 days from the closure of this application window. Florida is in the process of navigating the rebuttal and adjudication phases of the challenge process. They have publicly stated that they will submit these results to the NTIA for review no later than November 21st of 2024. Georgia has completed the challenge process and has not yet announced the start date for the application window. They were definitely looking to have this up and open closer to the end of October. So I think that we will probably be looking at a early to mid-November start, depending on the timeliness of their getting feedback from NTIA on their challenge process results. I think you'll notice as we go through these states, many of these states are in an interesting phase where they've completed the challenge process, but they don't want to open up project applications until they receive a finalized approved list of BEAD eligible locations from NTIA that they can provide to providers as they look to formulate their project applications. Moving on to Hawaii. Hawaii is still in the process of running its 90-day challenge process. That's looking to wrap up on November 18th. Once the challenge process is concluded and the NTIA approves the results, the Research Corporation for the University of Hawaii will hold 2 rounds of RFPs. One RFP that is focused on soliciting projects for serving unserved and underserved broadband serviceable locations, and the other RFP will focus on funding projects to provide gig symmetrical service to community anchor institutions. I would say start taking a look at the Research Corporation RFP grant management website to get yourself signed up for updates on those RFPs. The state of Idaho had wrapped up its challenge phase or challenge process adjudication phase as of October 1st of 2024. They are currently in the process of standing up the BEAD application and portal, and I expect there'll be more guidance published soon from those folks. Illinois is well underway with the BEAD process, having wrapped up its provider pre-qualification phase back in July of this year. The broadband office had anticipated starting the BEAD program in October, but they are pending NTIA approval of their volume 2. And today the state has yet to publish the finalized locations from the NTIA. And the state had committed publicly that they would publish this map at least 30 days before the beginning of the formal application process. So I would say if you're a provider in the state of Illinois interested in participating, you should expect to see an application notice of funding opportunity to be published soon. Moving on to Indiana. The pre-qualification process in Indiana wrapped up back in September, and they are currently targeting an early November date for round 1 bidding, and they are currently waiting for NTIA approval of their challenge process results. Next slide, please. Thank you. Moving on to Iowa. Iowa is currently awaiting, we're currently seeking additional information from the broadband office as to next steps. They received volume 2 approval within the last month. Iowa had stated publicly that they had proposed to publish a notice of funding availability document through the state to administer the program. As of checking this weekend, this NOFA document has yet to be published. Moving on to Kansas, the subgrantee application process is currently open in the state of Kansas and will close on December 5th. Moving on to Kentucky, the pre-qualification process began back in September. And they have yet to announce a start date for the commencement of BEAD applications, and I think in large part they are waiting for NTIA to approve their challenge process results before formally opening things up for providers. Moving to Louisiana, Louisiana by far is the furthest along in the BEAD process. They wrapped up 2 rounds of applications as of September 25th. They are currently working with providers to negotiate project areas and ensure full coverage of all of the unserved and underserved BSLs. So Louisiana, for most practical purposes, is done with the BEAD program. Moving on to Maine. Maine is currently getting ready for the next phase of its BEAD program to start accepting applications. They wrapped up their pre-qualification process back on October 18th. They're currently waiting for feedback from the NTIA on their challenge process as well as their proposed project areas. Within 30 days of the close of this pre-qualification application, providers will start getting notifications from the Maine Connectivity Authority to let them know about their ability to proceed into the BEAD project application period. Those who have been approved by the Maine Connectivity Authority will be able to look at the final PSAs and to actually submit bids on those final project service areas. Moving on to Michigan. Michigan is still waiting for NTIA approval on its challenge process results and project areas. Pre-registration had opened back in June, and they will continue to keep the pre-registration process open and review them on a rolling basis until 30 days following the opening of the subgrantee program project application window. The application window had been anticipated to open in late October. However, we're starting to run out of daylight here in late October, so I think that we'll probably see the first application window for fiber applications open in early to mid-November, with non-fiber projects probably being accepted in March of 2025, and probably looking towards the latter half of March. Obviously, this will be subject to change as Michigan decides, appropriate timing based on other feedback from the NTIA. Moving on to Minnesota. Minnesota wrapped up its BEAD challenge process back on October 21st. They have not yet announced the start date for the BEAD application process, and I think in part they are in the boat of waiting for NTIA approval of their challenge process results. Moving on to Mississippi. Mississippi wrapped up its BEAD challenge process back in October 7th. As of the date of the NTIA approval of their Volume 2, the BEAM office had planned to publish eligible project areas on the 15th and start accepting applications starting on December 9th and close the application window in February 6th of 2025. The BEAM office has notified providers that they will need to file, that had notified providers that they would need to file a letter of intent by November 18th. So that probably changes a bit the window of opportunity for folks who are interested in applying. So definitely want to be mindful of that November 18th date if you're interested in participating in the BEAD program in Mississippi. Moving on to Missouri, the Missouri Department of Economic Development is currently reviewing submitted pre-qualification materials. The pre-qualification applications were due or will be due 15 days prior to the end of each BEAD scoring application submission period. The round one of BEAD applications in Missouri are expected to open on November 15th and will remain open for 60 days. Moving on to Montana. The pre-qualification round for Montana began back on March 12th of this year. The department opened the main round application on August 13th and anticipates keeping the pre-qualification and main round application portals open 3 weeks after it receives approval of the challenge process results. The stated application window will close on October 31st. Next slide, please. Thank you. Moving on, the state of Nebraska, we are still seeking further guidance from the Nebraska Broadband Office about their next moves. They have not published anything on their website that indicates the timing or sequence for opening up the application window for providers to participate in the program. Nevada closed its BEAD application period back on October 10th, and they are currently processing the project's applications that they have received. New Mexico has submitted its proposed challenge process data set to the NTIA for approval as of August 29th. They are waiting for a formal data audit from the NTIA. And based on the timing of when they get that response from the federal government, New Mexico anticipates starting to publish its data kind of around late October with an aspiration to keep it no later than November 1st. The BEAD pre-qualification process is currently open as of September 16th and will close on November 1st of this year. Moving on to New York. New York concluded its ISP pre-qualification process on September 30th and plans to announce pre-qualified applicants on October 30th, tomorrow. The New York Broadband Office has yet to announce when it will begin soliciting applications for the program. Moving on to North Dakota. North Dakota wrapped up its challenge process, but we are currently waiting formal guidance as to next steps for the program. Oklahoma. Oklahoma is currently in the midst of its challenge process. It will be running the challenge process up until January 15th of 2025. Obviously, the State Broadband Office will need to get NTIA approval of these challenge process results really before they can start formally soliciting applications or project applications from providers in the state. Moving on to Oregon, which I notice is not listed on our slides here, but that's all right. Oregon is about to start the formal pre-qualification process for its subgrantees. They have not yet identified the start and end date at this time. I would encourage Oregon-based ISPs to visit the Oregon Broadband Office webpage and start collecting up the pre-qualification materials and items and make sure those are in good order or your ISP is in good standing with those requirements. For Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is getting folks ready for the pre-qualification process and is awaiting NTIA guidance on the BEAD eligible BSLs before giving dates to folks. Moving on to South Carolina. South Carolina has finished the challenge process as of July 15th and is currently awaiting NTIA approval of its BEAD eligible locations. And finally on this slide to Tennessee. Tennessee is currently accepting letters of, or had been accepting letters of intent up until October 23rd. The NTIA curing process of Tennessee's challenge process results started on October 9th. So like many of these other states that we've discussed today, Tennessee is going to wait for the NTIA to respond before opening up the application process to interested ISPs. Next slide, please. Thank you. And here we are with the great state of Texas. As of October 2nd, the Texas Broadband Development Office had identified its subcontractor to run the challenge process and has yet to publish information on when the challenge process will commence. Of the 56 states and territories in Washington, D.C. that are participating in the BEAD program, Texas has yet to receive Volume 2 approval. So it'll be very interesting to see the timing of when Texas will get approval of its Volume 2, especially considering that they will need to run the fairly lengthy, time-intensive challenge process in addition to being mindful of the 365-day timeline to run the subgrantee application and selection process. So Texas is in a very unique position. Moving on to Utah. Utah completed its challenge process as of July 9th. They are awaiting NTIA approval of their challenge process locations before initiating the pre-qualification process. They have stated that the pre-application and registration process for BEAD will occur concurrently. For the state of Virginia, Virginia launched its letter of intent window on October 1st and is running this phase for 60 days until November 30th, 2024. The Virginia Broadband Office is currently awaiting NTIA approval of its BEAD eligible locations. So that will obviously be a significant hurdle to think about when considering when the application window will open. Moving on to Washington State. Washington State completed its challenge process as of August 3rd and is waiting for NTIA approval of its list of BEAD eligible locations. West Virginia initiated its full application phase on August 26th with the intent to keep this open until October 24th. They kept their word and they closed the application period, formal application period as of October 24th. However, the West Virginia Broadband Office has announced that certain locations may be eligible for extended application acceptance. So clearly there's some areas that perhaps did not get as many applications as they had anticipated. This extension round will be held for select areas that receive no applications or non-cost effective applications with a presumptive open date of November or sometime kind of in early December. We will see, but certainly something to be mindful of if you're in the state of West Virginia. Wisconsin is currently anticipating opening its application window in November. They closed their letter of intent pre-qualification phase on October 1st of 2024. Wisconsin is administering this program through their Public Service Commission. So in terms of getting updates on the BEAD program in Wisconsin, I would recommend taking a look at the Public Service Commission website and the specific docket proceeding for the BEAD program, as they will be publishing more specific information regarding the timing for the formal state administration of the BEAD grant. And finally, moving on to the state of Wyoming. Wyoming has wrapped up its pre-qualification phase as of September 14th. At this point in time, Wyoming has opened its round 1 BEAD applications as of October 21st and will close applications on December 5th. And with that, I am going to hand it back to Alex.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was a lot of fantastic information. And then for everyone listening to this, either live or on the recordings, I just want to take this opportunity to kind of bring everything full circle. Our role here at Winncom is to try to take a very convoluted program at times and then make this simple, to partner with EcoCenter solution providers, and Tarana is a fantastic example of best in breed technologies for fixed wireless access. In addition to that, we do have a portfolio of other products. If you're looking at fiber solutions, both active or passive. But what I wanted to showcase here is our BEAD portal. If you had not taken the chance, I highly recommend you quickly register. It's as simple as an email address and a password. This site has a lot of fantastic information. First of which, webinars just like today's are listed here on demand, where you could hear latest and greatest of your state. You could hear more about grant writing or professional engineering, more details about active fiber or passive, or aerial versus burial deployments. So again, fantastic resource and repository of information at your fingertips. In addition to that, we also collect all of the state funding information. So for each state, where they are in the process, what their timeline looks like, and there's a lot of great information we have there, which I'll talk about in just 1 second. In addition to that, we have all of our supplier eco centers where you can dig into their product lines, see what is either BABA certified or falls within the exemption parameters. And then we bring that full circle with our Winncom BEAD overview, which has the rules and regulations associated to BABA and the BEAD program. So again, our role coming back to making this simple, this is a quick example. So I referenced that on this site, we have a list of each state, what their corresponding funding looks like. But as you dig into each one of those states, we have a lot of great resources. Again, providing you a centralized place to pull this. So this is an example of Colorado. We have their advanced program summary, their detail, their project workbooks, access and links directly to their portal, to their broadband map, to their BEAD eligible final locations, to their community anchor locations, their project areas, what they're defining their product or their scoring rubrics, what addresses are listed as high cost, and some FAQ information. So again, a fantastic resource to be able to pull all that information. A second example, and this came from a very recent customer conversation, Arizona is in the process of finalizing their marketing sound. So they put a 45-day period, 9/23 to 11/7, where they're collecting information. So customers can go on, register, and define their project areas, submit them for comment. And this is going to help Arizona define what these PAUs are going to look like. Where our role begins and where we can help you is if you are applying for BEAD funds or thinking applying for BEAD funds, we can help you with the pre-engineering end. So if you're in Arizona, for example, we have access, and I'll talk through this a little bit later in this presentation, a QGIS mapping database where you specify what county you're looking for. We take that, we're able to identify all the eligible areas, unserved or underserved locations. We then can work with this marketing sound document, highlight your project service area, be able to identify, and you can see this on the right-hand side of the screen, what the potential census block groups would look like. But ultimately, we can help plan out your technology and your engineering scope of how and where you're going to design these technologies and implement these products. So again, part of the value add that we offer here, Winncom Technologies. Last thing before I hand this back to Gabriel, timing is of the essence. As states finish their volume 2s, they're on a clock. They've got 1 year from that date to be able to put together all these rounds of funding. Now, every state, as Gabriel mentioned, is different, but most of these are at application phase, they're at pre-qualification phase, or finalizing the challenge process. So again, you're not too late if you haven't started the process, but I'd highly recommend reaching out. We've got some contacts at the end of this webinar, and let us help you plan out your strategy, help you plan out how to apply for pre-qualification. And then we've got the right team and resources available to make this a seamless process for you. Gabriel, if you don't mind, can you walk us through what the proposed BEAD alternative technology guidance looks like?
Happy to, Alex. Thank you. And absolutely want to underscore the point that that Alex just made about the timeliness of this. All states are going to be running up against the clock with the BEAD program. I think there are a lot of barriers and hurdles that a lot of states and even the NTIA had not anticipated in being able to successfully run this. So I think that time is increasingly going to be a luxury for a lot of these state broadband offices to make some very critical and crucial decisions. And it's important for folks who are interested in participating in the BEAD program to be very aware of their state's timeline. Thank you. I really want to take an opportunity to talk about this recent proposed alternative technology guidance from the NTIA. The NTIA published this draft guidance for public comment on August 26, 2024. And it really comes at a very unique time, as many states are already in the process of actively soliciting bids or have already received bids from providers for the BEAD program. But because of the timing of this guidance and where states are at in their respective BEAD processes, it's entirely possible that they're not going to be able to incorporate this guidance. But this guidance is important as it really ensures that state broadband offices have all the tools at their disposal to achieve the goal of 100% universal service, and that includes low Earth orbit satellite and unlicensed fixed wireless. And today we're really going to focus on talking about specifically the unlicensed fixed wireless aspect of this, because many providers who currently have unlicensed fixed wireless deployed in the field serving customers potentially have an opportunity to benefit from the BEAD program, and we'll talk about that. So first, what are alternative technologies? It's in the title of the guidance. Alternative technologies are defined by the NTIA as any broadband access technology that does not qualify as reliable broadband service, but is still capable of delivering speeds of 100 by 20 megabits per second with a latency of less than 100 milliseconds. The BEAD program has a controversial definition for reliable broadband service that pretty much only includes fiber optic cable, HFC cable, licensed fixed wireless, or fixed wireless that utilizes a mixture of hybrid licensed and unlicensed spectrum. This has disqualified a lot of unlicensed fixed wireless from consideration as part of the BEAD program, based on the fact that it is unlicensed, and that is viewed as not being as reliable as other fixed wireless technologies. But the NTIA has laid out now a clear process by which a state can consider these alternative technologies for funding through the BEAD program. And specifically, they identify the scenario that many states are currently facing right now, as I kind of already mentioned in the context of West Virginia. But in instances where an eligible entity has project areas that don't receive subgrantee bids for reliable broadband service, or they do receive bids, but they all exceed the extremely high cost per location threshold subsidy amounts, the NTIA will allow state broadband offices to consider alternative technology products. This guidance talks specifically through three specific scenarios for the states to think about, or to consider or think about, in terms of when alternative technologies might be warranted or allowed. So the first case that the NTIA spells out is the scenario where the project areas are already subject to an enforceable commitment with ongoing performance monitoring to provide alternative technology service that meets the BEAD performance requirements. An enforceable commitment, we'll talk a little bit about this, but an enforceable commitment is something like RDOF or some other federal program that perhaps had different parameters for what constituted reliable or eligible broadband service to be funded. But these types of programs, the NTIA has recognized, should be considered in helping to lift the burden for state broadband offices of achieving the goal of 100% universal service. The second case are project areas are already served with alternative technologies that meet the BEAD performance requirements. And this scenario is a scenario by which there's already an existing internet service provider who is making regular, FCC, BDC filings, deploying unlicensed fixed wireless to existing customers on their own dime, their own coin, that meet or exceed the BEAD performance requirements. And then the final case, case 3, is if neither of the above cases apply, the eligible entities have to identify a last mile broadband project to serve the relevant unserved and it is financially feasible underserved locations. And the eligible entity has the flexibility and the freedom to select alternative technologies as that last mile broadband project to achieve the goal of 100% universal service. And one thing before we move on to the next slide, anything that we discuss here today is subject to revision by NTIA. As I noted, this is draft guidance that was published back in August. Final guidance is expected to be published fairly soon, so states kind of know the letter of the law that they need to observe as part of their BEAD program. Next slide, please. Excellent, thank you. So for the first case that we're really going to discuss here, we really want to talk about the second case where there's an existing alternative technology provider already offering service in a given area with their own self-funded private network. This step is, I think, really a big opportunity for a lot of providers to ensure that they are not overbuilt by BEAD infrastructure, or potentially to just get recognition of the quality of their service, and potentially keep themselves, in mind for future state funding opportunities that may come down the pipeline. Specifically with this second case, broadband offices are instructed to look at the FCC National Broadband Map, identify existing alternative technology service providers. So they'll look through the BDC codes and the BDC filings for the state. And the state broadband offices have to at least give those providers the chance, the opportunity to demonstrate that they can offer BEAD qualifying service to the locations in the project area. And beyond just those technical considerations of whether the existing infrastructure can offer service to those locations, the state broadband office has to think about if the existing alternative technology provider has the financial and managerial sophistication and wherewithal to exist or endure. They don't want to look at an alternative technology provider, kind of say, well, they're already offering service here, I guess we'll just go ahead and call this area served, and the alternative technology provider goes out of business in a year and all those folks are left with no service provider options. State broadband offices want to make sure that these providers will endure and persist, and they're not these fly-by-night operations that disappear like a flash in the pan. In addition to the financial and managerial elements, the technology provider has to demonstrate that they have the technical and operational capacity to manage the network and offer the BEAD performance service. And specifically, the metric that the NTIA has articulated, and I think this will definitely be subject to some updates and changes. Providers have to demonstrate that they can provide a capacity of at least 5 megabits per second or usage allowance of 2 terabytes per month for each broadband serviceable location in the project area within 4 years. Eligible entities are told that they really only have to give alternative technology providers a 7-day window to indicate interest. I think that this likely will be extended, perhaps not by much, but I think alternative technology providers should and will have more than 7 days to indicate interest as part of this guidance. Next slide, please. Excellent. And then finally, case 3, this is the kind of last resort option where a state broadband office is in a position where, unfortunately, there's no existing alternative technology provider in the area and there's no existing enforceable commitment to offer service in the area. And this situation fully gives the state broadband office, I don't want to say carte blanche, but ultimate flexibility to choose the right and appropriate project for a given BEAD program to ensure that the state is able to achieve 100% universal service. And within the specific scenario, there are kind of 2 suggested pathways that the NTIA offers to eligible entities to solicit these different technology bids. First, the NTIA tells states that they can hold a another subsequent subgrantee selection round open to all types of eligible providers and technologies. So potentially that means you could have another selection round where you have a fiber application competing with a unlicensed fixed wireless application, potentially competing with a low Earth orbit satellite application. So potentially there'll be this kind of more chaotic this more chaotic subsequent round. Or the NTIA also spells out a specific subgrantee selection process that only considers alternative technology proposals. So they're only going to be looking at low Earth orbit technology proposals or unlicensed fixed wireless technology proposals. These option, that option I think is probably very likely given the time constraints that we've already discussed of this 365-day shot clock. State broadband offices are going to be at a position likely where they're at this phase where they're trying to fill in the final remaining broadband serviceable locations or clusters that have been the most expensive or the most hard to serve. And they're approaching the timeline to submit their final documentation to NTIA. This more selective, focused project application window for alternative technologies, I think, is probably going to be a more realistic option versus the kind of ensemble application that the NTIA recommended as a first course of action. However, even in this extreme scenario, the NTIA also articulates that even in a situation where no proposals are submitted, the BEAD NOFO does give entities the ability to engage directly with existing providers to expand their existing or proposed service. So whether you're an alternative technology provider who's already in a given area, or you're a low Earth orbit company, this allows the entities to reach out to you directly while trying to maintain some level of transparency with the taxpaying public. Next slide, please. Excellent. Thank you. So what does this alternative technology guidance really mean for you? And I think there are some kind of important considerations you should think about as you're looking at your state's BEAD process. First, I think the one question to think about is, does this apply to your state? Now, obviously, the NTIA wrote this guidance for all states, but there are certain there are certain constraints that states are being mindful of when they think about whether or not to adopt new guidance from the NTIA. For instance, the state of Nevada, which is fairly far along, has been fairly far along in its BEAD process, recently closed up a round of applications. As soon as the guidance came out, the state of Nevada adopted the guidance as is, held a very quick, kind of alternative technologies provider kind of interest period of 7 days. And so they essentially adopted the guidance right away, didn't give a ton of notice to providers. And I think a lot of providers were surprised when, when there was this unlicensed fixed wireless opportunity suddenly implemented as part of Nevada's program. I've spoken with other state broadband offices who've indicated, look, we're fairly early on in the BEAD process. We haven't even began to accept applications. We just don't think we're going to have the time to kind of have these alternative phases as part of the BEAD program. So certain state broadband offices have already indicated that, they're not that interested in the guidance and they're confident in their state's ability to close a digital divide themselves. Others, I think, are going to be much more open-minded and look to implement this policy or implement these suggestions and this policy as part of their BEAD program in a pragmatic and effective way. A state that comes to mind for me is the state of Alaska. I think this guidance is going to be really important for the state of Alaska, states like Wyoming, states like Montana, potentially states like Idaho, that have some really challenging population densities for the deployment of fiber infrastructure. So that's definitely something to think about. And I think to the extent you have a relationship with your state broadband office, I think it does not hurt to reach out to your state broadband office and ask about their opinion or how their office is considering the proposed alternative technology guidance. Second, I think it's important if you're an alternative technology provider to look at your network's ability to provide BEAD competitive service at the BEAD performance standards, so 100 by 20 megabits per second with a latency of less than or equal to 100 milliseconds. and trying to figure out if you can offer that service, but then also if you're able to offer that service to potential customers that the state broadband office might instruct you to be able to accommodate for. So thinking about your existing network provisioning and capacity is something that I think folks should be considering. Third, I think you want to make sure that your ISP is continuing to file timely, accurate, and up-to-date BDC filings with the FCC. The NTIA is going to, instructed states to look at the national broadband map for identifying those alternative technology providers. I think you want to make sure that your service is accurately reflected on that map. And then fourth, I think you want to take steps to pre-qualify your ISP for BEAD. States are putting a lot of thought into making sure that providers with sufficient technical, managerial, and financial capacity are able to participate in the BEAD program versus other ISPs that perhaps don't have the full level of sophistication or health to be able to be successful in a 4-year reimbursement-based government program. Obviously there's kind of less stringent pre-qualification requirements articulated in the alternative technologies guidance, but I think you should probably look at your state's pre-qualification or qualification guidance to get a sense as to what states will likely be expecting from you. And excellent. And our final call to action, I think that it's important that you sign up for your state broadband office's newsletter and subscribe to their social media. Sometimes there is a pretty shocking amount of lag between when states update their state broadband office website. Following your state broadband office director on LinkedIn or on Twitter or on Facebook and getting your state broadband office's newsletter is a good way just to ensure that you're not going to miss anything that might take a while to go live on the state broadband office website. As I kind of already mentioned on the last slide, definitely want to review your state's pre-qualification process as a reference point for preparing to participate in a potential alternative technology BEAD round. Third, you definitely want to get access to your free CostQuest Tier D FCC BEAD Fabric license. This is different than the CostQuest Fabric license that is used for BDC filings. This is specific for BEAD and will allow you to be able to access the most up-to-date BEAD location information as you plan your potential project areas and applications. Additionally, if you're a wireless internet service provider, consider partnering with local fiber providers in your area to partner on hybrid technology networks that use a mixture of robust wireless with fiber. I think hybrid technology bids are going to be very popular as part of the BEAD program, and I think we're going to start seeing some preliminary indication of that from some of these first mover states. And then finally, if you have any questions about the BEAD program or questions about Tarana Wireless as it pertains to the BEAD program, don't be bashful. Please reach out to me at gmoran@taranawireless.com.
Thank you, Gabriel. And then again, if you've got questions on how to start a consortium or potential fiber candidates or partners in your areas, we maintain a strategic list of partners in every state. We can also help with CostQuest Tier D licenses and what that looks like from a walkthrough perspective of how to register and then how to export that information based on either countywide deployments or if you're looking at census blocks or census groups. And finally, just if you are in the process of pre-qualification and there's any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to engage us. So kind of touching on what I talked a little bit about in the beginning of this presentation, Winncom's value. It starts as a technology distributor. For over 30 years, we've provided eco-center solutions. Now, what that relates to BEAD is we put things in two different buckets. First of all, we went through our best in breed suppliers and we identified who fell under BABA terms, right, for BABA certification. And that's both active and passive fiber. So from an active perspective, it would be Nokia's XGS-PON solution. From a passive fiber perspective, we offer a multitude of different suppliers that have manufacturing facilities in the United States that are developing at least 55% of the components that are derived domestically. And we can provide you kind of a good, better, best type of approach. In regards to fixed wireless access, partnering with Tarana was one of our strategic initiatives, but part of that application would be the middle mile. The licensed microwave 611-1823. It could be millimeter wave, your E-band technologies. It could be from a middle mile perspective, the infrastructure, the towers themselves. So again, through our portfolio of products, we have that complete solution suite for you, both on the BABA side of the house and then on the infrastructure and the exemption side. Now, in addition to those EcoCenter partners, we also have a host of engineering services. So a lot of conversations start with a one-on-one consultation where we sit down and understand what is your existing infrastructure, what is your technology preferences or expertise, and what areas, and usually we look at this from a county perspective, are you looking to build into? And then leveraging this tool here, we can see the unserved, underserved locations. We can see areas of existing technology. Is it fiber in this area, CBRS? Is it DSL? Is it cable? We can look at UCLA information for average upload and download speeds, and then we can look at if there is existing funding. Is there CPF? Is there RDOF funding? Exemption areas. And then we can put this all together. The way I usually explain this is an onion, and onions have multiple layers, but it starts with unserved, underserved, overlay that with your asset locations, overlay that again with other existing tower locations, and then that gives us the ability to really look at where to expand your network. And then the last piece of that puzzle is based on your individual state. How are they defining PAUs, project service areas? And then again, we can help with those in-depth design and engineering services through our teams and through our partners like Tarana Wireless. Now, in addition to that, if you are putting together a fiber or a hybrid solution, we have the ability to do high-level fiber designs. So this particular tool pulls from CostQuest, the Fabric D license. It charts unserved, underserved locations. There's an AI mechanism in this that will define the fiber spine based on the subscriber locations, and ultimately helps optimize your grant application process by providing a win-loss analysis and an in-depth pro forma. Now, in addition to this particular enhanced service, we also offer grant writing. And grant writing can be as in-depth as we will collect all the information for you. We can create the business narratives. We can put together the technology portfolio. We can submit the application on your behalf, answer any questions that may arise, and there's even a post-award compliancy piece. Now, a lot of customers are doing some of this process themselves. So our grant writing process kind of works like an if then else statement. Again, we can take everything and do it for you, or for a lower cost, we can either audit the process or have a lighter touch. So again, there's a model based on your preferences, and our goal again is to make this as cost effective and simplistic as possible. We offer professional engineering services. So this could be as in-depth as putting boots on the ground to do a high-level analysis and low-level analysis, or this could be as simple as doing PE stamp drawings for your infrastructure and access solutions. And then we bring this full circle with our partner Leaf. Now, high-level fiber designs, low-level designs, professional engineering, PE stamp drawings, grant writing services all have upfront costs, which are reimbursable through the grant process. But instead of taking a CapEx hit upfront through our Leaf financial partner, you can carry that burden over a 3 to 4 year period. Also can leverage this service with your 25% match in-kind contribution. So a lot of great information was talked about today. Highlighted a lot of what's happening at state levels. We talked a lot in detail about unlicensed fixed wireless access and where that might be a benefit. Again, what I would recommend if you are thinking about applying for BEAD, started the process, or even if you're at the applications phase, please reach out. We can have a one-on-one consultative meeting. There is something within our portfolio that we can leverage to make this simpler for you. Again, we certainly appreciate your time today. And then any questions, please direct them to either bead@winncom.com, or again, I highly recommend to leverage that Winncom BEAD portal for all that great information. Gabriel, any last thoughts or comments?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. Thank you so much to everybody who took the time to spend time on this call and hear our updates.
Thank you.